Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Daniel Miller, our next lieutenant governor.
He's got a bodyguard too.
Make a move and see what happens. Howdy. Oh, no, that won't do. Let's howdy. That's what I'm talking about. Well, she just gave the intro, so she just saved me a whole bunch of time. But I want to start off by dispelling, any kind of misinformation. Chad and I, although we share the same last name and the same barber, are not related. Well, look, folks, I'm going to tell you how happy I am to be here with all of you tonight. And thank you for carving out time to come out and be involved in the process. Right. I got involved in several conversations ahead of this, and one of them we were talking about how important it is to be active on the local level. And I said one of the misconceptions is that Austin is a thing unto itself. The way that we are governed in Austin is something unto itself. But it's like a big tapestry. And all of those threads are woven right here in our hometowns and communities all throughout Texas. And we send representatives there to do our work, to take care of us, to secure our liberty. And unfortunately, folks, the indication that they have failed is that I am in this race. Because I would have been very happy doing what I've been doing since August 24th, 1996, and fighting for a free, independent, self-governing Texas. But it has become increasingly clear that while we are fighting the tyrants in Washington, D.C., we are being governed by a group of tyrants and frat boys in Austin, Texas.
Yeah. Right.
I did call them frat boys. That just happened.
The club.
The club. I mean, look, I just passed around the microphone and let y'all, we just have a support group here tonight. Right? But you've heard every one of these people get up and talk about their passion for serving you. And I will tell you, these are not campaigns, folks. This is a movement. A movement to restore the people back to their rightful place in Austin, Texas, in our capital. And we need it now more than ever. Because when you ask yourself the key questions, the things that are important to you, did your property taxes go down? Or are people still being kicked out of their homes? Is our border, after 20 years of promises to do so, is our border secure?
No.
It's worse now than it's ever been. And I'm going to tell you, and Chad's going to appreciate this, how many of you agree with our government in Austin closing our businesses, closing our schools, closing our churches, and telling me and you that we're either essential or not essential? Folks, this is not Texas. We are being governed by a whole lot of petty tyrants that think that they are smarter than us, that think that we are too stupid to govern ourselves. But I tell you what, here's what I know. And this has been the banner that I have marched under for those 25 years. Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution, the document that every elected official has to put their right hand up in the air and swear an oath to uphold. Our Bill of Rights, right up front. Article 1, Section 2 says this: all political power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit. And it goes on to say that the people have the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their government in such manner as they may think expedient. And praise God that the people who drafted that Constitution had the foresight to reserve that right to us as an inalienable right. But you know, when you read it, you know what it doesn't say? It doesn't say that all political power is inherent in the politicians, or the pollsters, or the pundits, or the propagandists masquerading as mainstream media. It says all political power is inherent in who?
People.
Oh, come on, folks, that didn't sound very powerful. All political power is inherent in who?
The
The people. And who are we?
The people.
We're the people. This is a movement, make no mistake about it. A movement of the people of Texas that are tired of being treated like second-class citizens. Like the rules apply to us, but not those people in the political class. It is the people of Texas rising up and saying no more. No more mandates that steal us of our liberty and our freedom and our personal autonomy. No more promises to secure a border and then just campaign rhetoric blaming it on the federal government when they don't deliver. People rising up and saying, don't wet on my leg and tell me it's raining by telling me you're going to abolish property tax, and my property tax bills have gone up for 12, 20 years, right? We're tired of it. But it's not so much what we're tired of. Because we can sit here and say this is grievance-based. We've all got our mad spot to rub. But folks, this is a unique opportunity in our history. And the eyes of the world are on us right now. The eyes of the world are looking to Texas. You know, as president of the Texas Nationalist Movement, I've had a unique opportunity to see independence movements throughout the world. Over the last 75 years, we went from 54 recognized countries around the world to 192. And I got to see those people and their struggles for freedom and for independence and for the basic right of self-government that is contained in Article 1, Section 2 that I quoted a moment ago. And those people around the world that have not been able to experience self-government, that have had it robbed from them, are looking to us to set the example, to lead, to throw off a political class that believes that we're too stupid to govern ourselves, and they're looking for us to set the leadership example, to be that beacon of hope and liberty and freedom that people have always believed that we had been, that we always should have been, that the men at the Alamo fought and died to make Texas. And so to honor their legacy, to honor their memory, we go forth today to take back our capital, not as candidates, but as representatives of a movement of the people, committed to freedom, to liberty, and committed to independence. And so I will tell you, I am the most reluctant politician you will ever meet. This was never on my game plan, never on my radar, nothing I ever wanted to do. But I was called to serve. I was asked. And not by a few people, but by a lot. And that still didn't do the trick. What did the trick was the conversation with my wife, Kara, who's here. Many of you had the pleasure to meet with her back there. The conversation I had with her, where she said, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? We are at the most critical juncture in our history. I firmly believe the next 100 years of Texas history are being written right now. And how will history remember us? How will history remember us? How will future generations measure the strength and character of this generation of Texans? So it is for those reasons, and so many more, that we made the decision, and I am running to be your next Lieutenant Governor for the state of Texas. I appreciate that. That was not an intentional applause line. quite nice. You know I got a bodyguard, right?
Yes.
Okay. But I'm running, and listen very closely, to be your lieutenant governor. Because that in and of itself indicates that we have got a problem with one of the top positions in Texas government. A position that has historically been known as the most powerful constitutional office in the state of Texas. We've got a problem. I loved how Andy got up here. Andy came after and he was like, oh, man, I'm sorry I spoke too long. It's like, no. The people need to understand what's happening in the House. They need to understand what's happening in the government, because if it's not for people like Andy and the folks here, then most folks wouldn't know the shenanigans. But we've all been victims of a grift, of a bait and switch. Andy laid it out just a moment ago, how the power to secure our border has been in the hands of our government since day one. Not the federal government, but the state government. And they didn't do it. Because what do they say? Oh, federal government wouldn't let us do that. Send me a campaign donation. That's what happens. They raise money for their campaigns off of a broken promise by scapegoating the federal government on something that they could do themselves but have failed to do.
Right.
Much like the property tax bait and switch. Every election cycle we're promised, we're going to reduce your property tax burdens. Well, I'm going to tell you what, that less than $200 that they cut us as scraps from the master's table during the special session ain't going to cut it. Am I right?
All right.
And it's been this way on so many issues. So now we go. We leave here tonight, hopefully beyond just fired up, but inspired to go out and not just vote for Daniel Miller for lieutenant governor, but vote for everyone here who is ready to take back our government for us, who had the fortitude and the strength to step forward and stand up and put their name on the ballot, to go out and champion us against a political establishment that has everything to lose if the people regain their power. And so, while I would ask you tonight to help come on board, help us win this race for lieutenant governor by sharing the word, because trust me, mainstream media is not super keen on Daniel Miller, the Texan guy, running for lieutenant governor. Right? And I'm going to tell you, the folks that write the big checks, not real keen on Daniel Miller, the Texan guy either.
Right.
But let me tell you whose support that I want. I want each of yours, and your family, and your neighbors, and your friends. That woven tapestry that I mentioned at the very beginning. And I want you to go out and help not just my campaign, but the campaigns of those people that inspired you tonight, that put their names on the line for all of us. And so I was handed a card, and I'm going to end with this, because I was handed this card right before before the event kicked off. And it was a card from the folks here. By the way, thank y'all so much. I can't express. You guys don't know, I drove from Nederland, Texas to be here tonight. Straight. You know where Nederland is? I will give you a hint where Nederland is. If you follow the path of Hurricane Rita, it's about 3 blocks west of my house. Yeah, so right down there, almost to Louisiana, although I would suggest that our gumbo is far better than Louisiana's. So we made the drive, and this was handed to me, this card, and there's something that, if you'll notice, I did not put it safely with the other thing you gave me, because there was something in it that I wanted to share. And there was a quote in here, and it says, "Texas, the last frontier for freedom." And that struck me, because it echoed the sentiment that I've heard from so many people not just from all these countries around the world, but from other states of the United States, from our citizens here that feel powerless. They are looking for us to stand. And I always quote, I end my remarks with a quote from Sam Houston, and I'm just going to show you guys how rebellious I am, because every political consultant, politically minded person have told me that I should not end my political speeches with these words. And first off, I have to tell them, I don't give political speeches. I just talk. And I share what's here and here, which obviously is not much if you go up higher, right? And they tell me don't do it. So you know what I do? I do it every time. I don't care. If it makes the political class have intestinal issues, it makes me that much happier. But I end it with these words, because I believe it was a challenge put forth by Sam Houston. And there will never be a day that I will not quote Sam Houston publicly and proudly. You understand? Yes. After Texas joined the Union, he said these words. He said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. My friends, I believe that's a challenge for our generation. Yeah. And I believe that that time is now. And the question is, will you stand with her? I want to thank you so much for your time tonight. So we'll take it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. My qualifications? Well, you know, the constitutional qualifications apparently are that I only need to be able to fog a mirror and be over a certain age. So, you know, I've got both of those in spades, right? Absolutely. Look, personal exploration, sure. So, I will tell you that when I first graduated high school, my career path, don't laugh anyone, I was going to be an astrophysicist. And August 24th, 1996 derailed that for me, because that's the day that I made the decision to become involved in Texas independence. From that moment forward, I have worked since the 90s as a freelance technology consultant. I've worked for major corporations, I've worked for small businesses, mom and pops, but I have been self-employed as a technology consultant since that day. So with that, my wife and I, you know, we're entrepreneurs. We started Radio Free Texas, as you heard in the bio. But I will tell you, my work with the T&M has carried me all through the halls of the Capitol in Austin to work to advance legislation on things like monument protection. And you guys, have y'all heard about the gold? You guys heard about the gold depository bill, right? Remember the headline where Texas got its own Fort Knox? That bill would not have made it across the finish line had it not been for our organization. So we, you know, effectively, I have to manage on the day-to-day an organization of almost 500,000 people with a large team. So having that experience in managing large teams, being a technology consultant, being able to work with people on an individual basis or through corporate situations, but more importantly, being able to effectively and successfully navigate the halls of the Capitol in Austin, those would be the qualifications. And the fact I'm not afraid to speak my mind.
Yeah, right.
Yes, sir.
Dan, I have a question here.
Yes, sir.
So maybe tell us a bit about what responsibilities the lieutenant governor position has.
Sure.
And then what are you going to do with those responsibilities?
Well, I will tell you, the lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate, right? So the lieutenant governor, as sort of the second guy in charge, presides over the day-to-day operations of the Senate. Now, when we talk about effectively what that means in the legislative session, I will just defer to what Dan Patrick said when he ran against David Dewhurst back in 2014, I guess it was, when he said that it is the lieutenant governor's job to get legislation passed, and if something gets passed, it's because the lieutenant governor wanted it passed. And if it doesn't, then it's because the lieutenant governor didn't want it passed. So the lieutenant governor effectively is the most powerful constitutional position because they have that power. But what we have seen is we have seen a usurpation of that power by both the House essentially that effective, or the power being ceded by the lieutenant governor over to empower the House more. But more importantly, we've seen the lieutenant governor cede power to the governor. And that became very plain during the lockdowns, when we were being shut out of our businesses and churches and all those things. The lieutenant governor could have spoken up, and yet he said nothing. And because he is the second position, effectively, but even the most powerful position, his word carries a lot of weight. But what happened was we got someone who was silent on the issue. And that's not the first time. So what would I do different? Well, first off, the lieutenant governor position is a bully pulpit, right? We got to speak up. We got to speak loud and proud. But number two, from a technical standpoint, the House has held so many bills up that it becomes almost a one-for-one, which is House of Representatives, you're getting absolutely no legislation through until we get these priorities addressed. No more bills about mermaids and mustaches, right? I don't care where the Christmas capital of Texas is. You don't get to name any of your highways or any of those things until the priorities get done, right? The lieutenant governor has the power to make that deal and stick to it. Dan Patrick wouldn't, because he has a history of backing down when things get hard. So, yes, ma'am. Hello, fifth generation.
I'm in real estate and I've seen a lot, most of the gospel work here, I deal with large homes, and all these Californians are coming. And it's
Northern California.
Good, and I'm really concerned. Number one, I have two questions. Number one, how are we gonna keep these Californians from turning us purple or blue? That's one question. And number two, they're buying houses for hundreds and thousands more than what they're worth, which is gonna increase the property taxes. How are we gonna stop that?
Okay, well, I can tell you right now, I'll take the property tax question first. Number one is we need to abolish property taxes. Property taxes are People are saying, how are you going to fund the government? And guess what? There have already been two plans laid out, one by the Texas Public Policy Foundation that sets an effective end date for 10 years. I believe that by passage of a constitutional amendment abolishing the immoral property tax, right? So we get the constitutional amendment done, and then passing legislation that would initiate an immediate moratorium on kicking people out of their homes for non-payment of property taxes. Let's stop kicking people out of their homes. It will successfully motivate the legislature to compress that 10 years down to something a lot more manageable and a lot quicker as far as relief goes. But it's time to get rid of the property tax. There are other ways to deal with it. It's Byzantine, it's draconian, and it's immoral, and it's got to go. Okay? So that's number one. Number two is a good Texan answer that I'll give you. If you want to control who comes in and out of Texas, you have the ability. The only way you do that is to get the ability to set your own immigration policy. And you only get the ability to set your own immigration policy as if Texas reclaims its status as a self-governing independent nation. Until then, the federal government will continue to leave the borders wide open, and they will continue to shove people in here until they successfully engineer Texas into no longer being Texas. I got to answer a Texan question. That's nice. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, so as an ex-Californian. Well, okay, but I got to
Before your question, let me just, I want to say this because I want you to understand something. The vast majority of people that we have interacted with that are coming from places like California, New York, a lot of those places, sure, there's some tech relocations and things of that nature, but understand that a lot of those people are effectively political refugees.
That's exactly right.
They are fleeing states
Right.
that are perfectly all right with forcibly modifying the gender of your child, right? Or have implemented neo-Marxist policies as official directives from the government. So I don't look at that because here's the litmus test I use. If Crockett, Bowie, and Travis could be from someplace else and come give their lives in support of the cause of independence, then who are we to set the bar any higher? The only judgment is not where you're born, but what you do when you get here. So,
That's right.
so go ahead.
You kind of hit on it. So the one thing I would say is most of the Californians I know coming here fought there. So if you think it's hard fighting here, be a conservative fighting in California.
That's right.
You know, I mean, I was on those trunk lines, and man, the things you were told that, you know, obviously they're not stopping. But the thing is, you said it. Your problem is not with Californians like me moving on our own, right? It costs thousands. You guys think your costs are high. It costs thousands to move here. A U-Haul is $6,000 for a U-Haul truck, one way. So, you know, we put everything in it, right? But we're not moving again, so that's why I'm here. I ain't gonna let it go that way. But your problem is bringing over tech companies from the Bay Area. You do that, heck, if I was, I want to stop them. You guys will have to beat me to the border to stop those people, but that is the problem. It's these states are getting greedy and they bring in all these people.
Does the lieutenant governor have any authority on that position where we're probably capitalists giving these property tax cuts?
Get rid of the Texas Enterprise Fund.
There it is, that's it.
Which are taxpayer subsidies for these corporations to move here. If we're going to have a level playing field, let's not have the government put their thumb on the scale by taking my money and your money and giving it to a big corporation in the form of tax abatements and tax incentives. Right? Because that's effectively what it is.
Yeah.
And this has been on the radar for a long time. When Perry and those guys set up Texas Enterprise Fund, it was for many, many years a chief cause, a chief priority for conservative candidates was to abolish the Texas Enterprise Fund. Stop putting the thumb on the scales. And you know what happened? They just ignore it. Because it makes headlines. It makes people feel good when they say, well, you know, we had big corporation fill in the blank, move here to Texas, and it's going to have this economic impact. Well, you know what? If we did things like abolish the franchise tax and abolish property taxes, you know what? That might incentivize people like us to start up the next business that became the next major corporation, homegrown right here in Texas. But when they are taxing us into oblivion and allowing the federal government and their monetary policy, that 6.8% inflation rate, to drive everybody in Texas that much closer to poverty, well, you know what? That's the government playing favorites, and I don't believe in that.
That's right. Yeah.
I just felt like I don't get it.
I'm Paul Spencer. I'm running for president of Texas. I'll work with anybody that wants to work with me. Actually, what this is about is I was also from California. I moved from Beaumont, Texas. We've beaten Wheeler every time we played them. Because we had Charlton Pollard. Yeah, okay. And Beaumont's a rough area if you know anything about, oh gosh. And I was a little guy.
Here's a hint for you. My wife was a hustler.
Not a hussy, a hustler.
That's one of the hustlers. Yeah.
Not a hustler, hustler.
Yeah, exactly. That's a rough area down there, and I grew up there. I went to California in 1983 with the 700 Club. I was an area district manager down there for Pat Robertson. And I've been in business, I've had my own companies and everything. I was there in 83 and I was there until 1999. I want to tell you what happened with Proposition 101. Close the borders. That's the way Californians thought back then. They were fairly conservative. They tried. ACLU came against us, so did the federal government.
Right.
And they sued California. 3 years later, Proposition 107, same thing. We tried to close the border. Why? We had 10 million back then that came across. 10 million. Nobody ever said anything about that. It broke LA County 3 times from 1983 to 1999. The reason I know that is my wife was a nurse supervisor for the LA County hospitalization doctor and all that kind of stuff. They could not give us the care that we needed because we were birthing their babies. Okay, that's the DACA children that we have now. You're paying for it. You're paying for it now. You've been paying for it for a long time. You just didn't know it. We leave those borders open, and you wonder about the mask mandate? Give me a break. These people are not being vetted. They're not being tested. We used to monitor them for tuberculosis to come over here, and they had to wear a mask. Then we knew who had tuberculosis, who didn't. Now we don't know. Everybody wears masks. And we couldn't monitor them because they wouldn't come back to be monitored. We knew that way back then. How many years ago has that been? Has anything changed? Not with the federal government, has it? But the state of California quit, they gave up. And the only enclave of conservatives, Orange County, San Diego, and little spots around Sacramento, really, just the farmers. That's all they got. But that, we're gonna be the same way as California. This is a warning. If we don't do something right now,
Right.
Come on.
first of all, get on your knees and pray.
Yeah.
That's number one, okay? Number two is get activated,
Yeah.
get motivated, and get as many followers. Look, we're evangelists.
Yeah.
We all are. Get out there and tell somebody what's going on. Now, I gave you a tidbit about what happened in California. Do you want that for Texas?
No.
All right, then do something. And quit talking about it. Do it.
I expected him to drop the mic when he was done. It's gonna be a mic drop moment. But look, he's not wrong, and I'm gonna wrap up here because I know it's getting late and everyone's ready to kind of visit and then get on out of here. So what I'm gonna say is this: he's not wrong. The sense of urgency is there. What I said a moment ago was not hyperbole. The next 100 years of Texas history are being written right now. And you heard it from the voice of a refugee, someone who came here because they wanted Texas to set the example. That begins in this cycle with us taking back our capital. And so with that, I'll ask you with this last question. Can you imagine your current lieutenant governor showing up early to this event and setting up the PA before the event? I like to work and I like to get things done. But I humbly ask, if I did not do enough to earn your vote tonight, I at least ask for the opportunity for you to do your due diligence. But however you decide, understand that the time is now. It's time to take Texas back. Thank you all very much.